Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Go ahead.
In accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec, the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, announcement is made that notice of this meeting has been provided by the Board Secretary to the Daily Record and published on October 31st, 2019 by stating the time, place, and date of this special meeting. Nora, you want to call the roll?
Mr. Berkowitz?
Here.
Mr. Kaplan?
Here.
Mr. Prasad?
Here.
Mr. Reddy?
Present.
Mr. Willens?
Here.
Chairman Irakane?
Present.
We also have with us our board attorney, Mr. Herniak.
Here.
Yes, I am here. That's the reason, but I can verify
Our
that.
board planner, Mr. Chadwick.
I'm here also.
And our board engineer, Mr. Holloway.
Here.
Okay, can we start off with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point in this evening's meeting, is there any member of the public who has anything to be brought this board that's not on this evening's agenda? I'm going to start off with a little levity. Today's November 13th. Okay, does anybody know in television what this is famous for?
Yeah, it's Hunger Day.
What?
Hunger Day. It's the Odd Couples when Felix got kicked out of his wife's.
Winner was when Felix Unger got kicked out of the house in The Odd Couple. His wife threw him out of the house.
We celebrate it every year.
Very good. I thought I'd stump the group with that
Mr.
one.
Tombalakian, I don't know what
Oh
to make of
my
that.
God! Wow.
We'll unpack
Wow.
that when you get on the record. Wow.
I'm going to throw another one out, just so you got the first one. Do you remember Life of Riley? What was the address of the house?
We're gonna do it first.
That's a little different from my time.
He might-
Anybody know?
It was in Wistful Vista.
1313 Blueview Terrace.
Why is that important?
I wanted to stump the crowd, and he got the first one, so I had to come through with another. Okay, that's it. Now we'll get serious, because I can see Mr. O'Neill's giving me funny looks. We have, you never heard of the Life of Riley?
William Bendix?
William Bendix. You are that young.
The guy who played Babe Ruth. Did you ever see the Babe Ruth story?
Played Babe Ruth.
Well, in the movie.
In the movie, Babe Ruth.
In the Babe Ruth story. Never-
I think one of these nights we have to have a TV nostalgia get together.
Mr. O'Neill. Never heard of any of this. I'm very confused right now.
We have resolutions to approve here?
Yes.
How come I don't seem to have them?
We don't have.
Because I did not receive them.
Excuse me?
I didn't receive them.
Oh, you did not receive them, so I guess we're not going to approve
No.
this. Okay, you don't have them, right? Okay. All right, first application 1950 Cozy Day Spa. D variance for a massage spa.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joseph O'Neill here on behalf of the applicant Cozy Day Spa. A little while ago, I came before this board on an application for a bank in a strip mall where a bank had been, and it had to be replaced. And now this evening, I am in front of you for a day spa in the exact same space that was occupied by a tanning salon. So you're going to hear testimony about the similarities of these two operations. You're going to hear testimony that we're not modifying the space barely at all, just cleaning it up. And with me this evening is Ms. Karen Lee, who I'm going to have sworn.
Ms. Lee, would
Hold
you
on, Karen, you need to stand up.
Ms. Lee, if you could please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Karen is traditional spelling, K-A-R-E-N,
Yes. Lee, L-E-E.
and Ms.
And I-
Lee is?
She is a representative of the proposed tenant, and the tenant is here also. I'd like, with the board's indulgence, to have her sworn, Ms. Wazi Lee, even though her English is really not very good. But I
Will
might
she
need-
understand the oath?
She'll understand the oath.
Okay.
Yes. Why don't you
If you would please rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Would you please spell your first and last name? You can lower your hand.
My name is Hua Ji.
If you could spell that for me, please, loudly.
Huazili.
I'm going to need some assistance.
H-U-A, capital Z-I-L-I.
Okay. And Ms. Zealy is
She
another
is actually the
representative?
licensed operator of the spa.
Licensed operator of the spa. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
Now, Karen.
Yes.
'Cause,
You can sit down.
Bob.
Ms. Zealy, you
Can
can
I-
sit down. Thank you.
No, hold on. I'm just going to ask you some questions here real quick. Now, we've introduced Wazi Lee, and she is the licensed massage therapist who's going to be operating the spa. Is that true?
Yes, Huazili is a licensed professional with the state of New Jersey, and she owns the Koji Day Spa.
She's
Mr.
been
O'Neill, could you
licensed-
move that microphone maybe a little closer to Ms. Lee?
Yeah, Ms. Lee. Now,
Thank you.
she's been a licensed operator for 12 years,
12
working
years.
in various other locations, right?
Yes.
Where are those locations?
It's one is it's in Parsippany.
Well, that's the location that
That's
we're-
300 New Road, Parsippany, New Jersey. New Jersey. The other is it's called Area Spa Massage, 1401 New Jersey 23 Butler, New Jersey. Hawaii.
So now she's
Yeah.
going to be operating there. How many people will she have with her?
Well, initially she will have a office manager and full-time therapist, which is Fazili. So
And,
yes, she anticipate as the business grows, then she will have at least 4 more licensed therapists who can take over the hours for clients. I have some problem.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, now everything's done by appointment, right? There are no
Yes,
walk-ins?
yes. Business service will be done by appointment only, and no walk-ins accepted.
As I mentioned, there's really no remodeling being done to the space, right? It's just nothing major?
It's no major. Actually, the space was abandoned by the tanning salon 1 year ago, and that space we have will have only modification being a shower room. It's called we call it a scrub room.
Shower?
Yes,
It'll be
shower.
it looks like a shower.
It's the same.
Right.
Yes.
And that's for therapy and for people to get oils off.
Yes.
And also, she's going to be accepting referrals from doctors? Is that
Yes.
true?
Yes. When doctor gives a prescription to have a massage therapy, she'll accept it.
Now, this is Ms. Lee's first self-employment opportunity. is that
Yes,
right?
it's the very first one, and then she had 12 years employed with other locations, and then she's an excellent
Now, could you
therapist.
just tell us why this shopping center? There's other similar uses serving the community in that shopping center?
Oh, let me see. I will ask.
Ms. Lee is fluent in Korean and is acting as a translator for me right now. with the board.
Well, she was looking around, her new business, and then she liked the neighborhood, and she liked to, start here.
And she's licensed in New Jersey. So.
Yes.
Now, the initial hours, well, the hours we're asking for are 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Isn't that right?
Yes, and 7 days per week.
7 days a week. That's when it's
Mr.
fully
O'Neill, you said
operational.
9 a.m. to 11 p.m.?
11
p.m.
11 p.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's ultimately when she gets all when there's 5 therapists working there, right?
Well,
She's not, or maybe she will be working 9 to 11 by herself.
yes, for the beginning,
Okay,
yes.
okay. And there's really no waiting room proposed because that's not how the scheduling is done, right?
Yeah, it's done all by appointment.
And one
And then
person,
no overlap anyone's treatment.
no overlaps in the
Right.
treatment. So they come in for their appointments, they go right into the massage therapy room.
Yes.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Just a quick question before the board takes over. She's a licensed in New Jersey what?
Massage therapist.
Massage therapist, thank you.
Oh, and one other question. Everybody employed there will be licensed massage
Oh, yes,
therapist.
yes, that's necessity.
Thank you.
Doesn't the township have a license as well?
I believe they do, which will be taken care
And
of.
you'll do that? too?
Yeah, we'll comply with all local regulations.
Pardon me if I missed it, but how many people will they be servicing at one time?
How many people will be serviced at one time?
Like how many employees and?
There's
Oh,
going to be
well,
5 therapists, right?
It should be later on.
Yeah,
At the
later.
beginning, it's one manager, office manager, and herself.
Okay,
And then gradually hoping to grow.
okay. Any questions on the right?
Yes, you mentioned having another spa in Parsippany. Is that still in operation or closed?
Oh, no,
employed there.
no, she's
Oh,
employed.
she's employed
yes.
there. Okay.
So in the space, how many rooms are you going to have? How many treatment rooms?
We have 5.
5
total,
treatment.
yes.
Did you look at and reject other locations that were permitted in Parsippany? Oh, is it not permitted anywhere?
Is it a
Not
permitted use?
Zoning
Oh, in the
doesn't
whole town?
determine it.
It's not a permitted
Got it,
use.
that's fine. Okay.
They've not classified this as a personal service for some reason.
Got it.
There, you are right, Mr. Kaplan, and Mr. McDonough is going to talk about the fact that there are other facilities that do this that get permitted all the time. Right across the street, there's one. There's one down by the Wawa. So it's a little uneven in its application.
Understood, thank you.
You'll be getting clients through physician referrals? How are
that's-
you going to get people to know that?
Actually, we are going to prepare flyer to promote neighborhood, and also we have a website to create. And by mouth, she has already several clients.
Can I clarify something?
Please.
With regard to the physicians? Massage therapy in the state of New Jersey is subject to sales tax unless you get a prescription from your doctor. Then there is no sales tax. So in order for someone to get covered, they would have to present a doctor's prescription. Otherwise,
Oh,
it's
yes,
tax-
of
otherwise
course,
it's
yes,
taxable.
yes.
So
But
that's
that's
how
not-
they're gonna, that's how that all works.
You do
Yes.
accept people without doctor prescriptions, so that is.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
I got a friend.
Any other questions over here? Any questions on the left?
Not for this one.
Any members of the public have any questions of this witness on the testimony given? I hear none and see none.
Now, I did ask the architect to attend this evening, but as I mentioned, the plans have been provided to the board, and you'll notice that there is absolutely no renovation to the tanning salon space. So I'd ask if the board had any questions, I would bring that architect up. Otherwise, I'd just go on to Mr. McDonough for his testimony.
Anybody have any architectural questions?
Just for clarity for me, the proposed scrub room, what does that do?
That's the shower room.
That's a shower. Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and go with Mr. McDonough? Doesn't seem to be.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lee. Yes, you can sit down.
Yes.
Over there. I'm going to bring up
Okay.
Mr. McDonough now.
Oh, yes.
Mr. McDonough, you know the drill. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And if you could gently remind me of your first name.
First name John,
John.
last name McDonough.
And nothing has changed in regard to your experience,
Not in the
licenses
last week,
in the
no.
last 7 days?
All licenses are still
As far
current?
as I know.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr.
Thank you.
McDonough, you've had an opportunity to examine the local ordinances and master plan.
Yes.
You've also examined this application.
Yes, I have.
I wonder if you can give us your findings regarding the comparison of this application to those documents.
Sure. So we're here in the B2 Highway Development District, which is akin to the Highway Development District or the Highway Business District. It allows for a wide variety of uses. We're looking at a retail building, a strip center building that has about 9 or so units in it right now. They're located at the confluence of Edwards Road and Route 46 eastbound there. All the surrounding land uses are commercial. This is not a residential area. It's a highway-oriented area. The uses that are in the building now, it's segmented into these relatively small spaces, about 1,200 square feet. This particular unit, 1,285 square feet, so it's not a big space. It's a relatively small space. You heard about the 5 treatment rooms, and it's essentially moving from one personal service use to another personal service use. This particular personal service has to be unclassified here in the Parsippany municipal standards. So that's why we're here for a D1 use variance to allow for this particular occupancy. The nature of the use itself is beneficial. It goes towards health and wellness, and as you've heard, there's a number of therapeutic benefits that would go towards the positive criteria for this particular land use in the statutory test. On the positive side, therapeutic massage is a licensed business. It is a licensed facility here in the state of New Jersey. It's actually a revocable license. I believe it's renewable on an annual basis, so it could get pulled if for whatever reason the facility was not being operated in accordance with the massage therapy standards that are issued by the state. Health and wellness, that goes towards circulation, it goes towards posture, it goes towards pain management. Physical therapy may be used to treat headaches, to treat backaches, sports industry injuries, muscle aches, pregnancy issues. All of that goes towards the benefits of massage therapy. All of this goes towards public purpose A under the land use law, the promotion of the general welfare. On the negative side, whenever we look at a use variance, we look at whether the use is a substantial departure from what's allowed in the zone. And really, this is akin to what would be allowed in the zone. This is a zone that would allow for other personal establishments, such as a beauty salon, such as a barber shop. A medical office could go in this space, a medical clinic could go in this space, a healthcare service, and then, of course, the whole plethora of other uses as well. Retail stores, restaurants, auto sales could go on this particular site and related services, pet shops, vocational facilities. A lot of much more intense uses can go in this particular space. So the appeal from a planning standpoint is that this is a very relatively low intensity land use. It is a highly regulated land use subject to outside agency jurisdiction. And with that, we believe the statutory test is met. In terms of parking demand, no greater demand for this space than the prior use. 1 per 200 would be the category that it fits in, so this is not increasing the overall parking demand, and I believe in that regard, not triggering a parking variance. And actually less intense than other permitted uses in the zone, which could require 1 per 150 square feet. So this only requires 1 per 200, less than what could be in that physical space. Based on all of the above, the relief can be granted here without substantial impairment to the zone plan, without substantial detriment to the surrounding neighborhood, and I believe the statutory test is met.
And the signage that we proposed in accordance with this as complying signage?
Yes, my understanding is either going to replace what's there or certainly conform to the ordinance requirements.
Thank you. I have one other question for you, Mr. McDonough.
Yes.
How do you compare this to the other uses? We're seeing this more and more that I described down by the Wawa across the street. I forgot about Massage Envy, which
I was going to say, this has now become a national land use. We have national brands that do this as well, as this particular land use and the health benefits that go with it are becoming more commonplace. So it is not different than the other uses that have manifested here, or I should say the other users that have manifested here.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
So, John, what you're saying is this use should be included in other similar uses to
It's-
avoid people coming to us.
it's worth something that could be considered in an annual report to the planning board, yes.
Nora, would you just make a note of that for our, when we do our report? Thank you.
Sure.
I think I heard from the master planners that that is something they're putting forth.
Oh, it is? Let's go.
It really is, Mr.
Why didn't-
McDonough, a question of how the people apply for the use. If they apply for a day spa that features massage, it seems to slide through without much difficulty, and then the use just. is
Mr. O'Neill, why
unfixed.
didn't you do like a get an interpretation where the board could find this is a personal service, which would then filter down to the zoning department that you'd already decided this? That would've
Well,
cleaned-
to be
that would've got
honest-
it done,
To be honest with you, having done the massage on me before,
yeah.
I was, familiar with the idea that in
Yeah.
town it wasn't really
You
common
didn't figure
use.
it.
Then when the client came in and started describing to me the other uses, that's when we realized what was going on, really.
Good.
Any questions on the right? Questions on the left? Questions from members of the public? What's next?
Well, I'll just rest on the application that's submitted. We think that this is becoming a more and more common use, and hope that the board sees fit to approve this in this location.
Very carefully, I'm gonna say, do we need to go into oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? I hear none and see none. Do we need a conference? Need a conference? Need a conference?
No, no.
No conference. Someone like to make a recommendation for this one?
I can do it. I think the testimony showed that the use is certainly appropriate. It's akin to the prior tenant, and there are several other similar like uses throughout the township. I certainly will be voting yes for this.
Someone frame a resolution?
I will do it.
Thank you.
Application number 19:50, Cozy Day Spa, 309-345 Road 46, Block 767, Lot number 2, Zone B-2, to issue or grant a D variance for a massage spa.
Second, Willen.
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Mr. Berkowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan.
Yes.
Mr. Prasad.
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
Mr. Willand.
Yes.
Chairman Irakan.
Yes. Result is the variance is granted. Memorialize this couple of weeks.
Yep.
And then we'll be free to proceed.
Thank you, everyone.
Quite welcome.
Good luck.
Mr. O'Neill, I'm gonna hear the Young Kim application because Mr. Prasad can't sit, I guess can't sit on. You can't sit on? Which one can't you sit on? Forge fine. So
Okay.
we'll get to the other one, that one is still here. This way he doesn't have to hang around.
I didn't listen to the, I wasn't.
Good luck.
Congratulations. You bet. Nice meeting you as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Only 5 people are here?
That's your prize for answering the question.
I'm sorry.
That's your prize for answering the question.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you so much. You
Yeah.
know what, I'm gonna pass out for identification purposes. Let me identify myself first. Stephen Tombalakian from Wheeler Law Group on behalf of the applicant, Young B. Kim, who's standing to my right. And we're here tonight for a use variance because a portion of the accessory garage structure was converted to an apartment. And it's been kind of a mystery, and we've kind of tried to forensically figure out how this happened, what happened, but we'll get into that. Let me just pass these to Nora. And pardon me for marking up my own exhibit, because I realized I did a typo and ham-handedly tried to fix it. What I'm going to pass out to the board, two things. One is a timeline with documents. Another one is photographs, black and white, unfortunately. I do have the original colors, but it'll make more sense. You can see. And we'll swear you in when you're going to testify.
Mr. Tombalakian, when these get over to me, let's talk about how we're going to mark these up.
Just
so
for
that-
identification.
Okay.
What I'm proposing to do is, what you'll have in front of you is called a subject property timeline, which I'd like to have marked for ID as A1.
Okay.
And then there's going to be a set of 12 photographs Again, I have the color ones, but unfortunately my copying capacity was limited to black and white. So there's 12 color, black and white photographs of both the primary home as well as the accessory apartment. So as soon as that's distributed, I want to give the board at least a little bit of a introduction as to how it is that this situation happened. And
A2 for the photos?
Photos, please. Okay. So we're here tonight on a property, it's on Old Bloomfield Avenue, kind of facing Route 46, 296 Old Bloomfield, block 626, lot 9, and that was my typo. I had 901 up there, so I had to just kind of change it with a pen. So here's what happened. Mr. Kim is a would-be property investor, and he decided this would be a good opportunity to invest in a property and kind of build his portfolio. So there was this property in 2016 was in pre-foreclosure. So Mr. Kim believed he did, and you're going to hear from him directly as to his due diligence with the sellers, purchased the property on short sale. Got into a little bit of a dispute with his neighbor regarding diversion of drainage onto Mr. Kim's new property. And then there was a knock at the door from the zoning department saying, we hear there's an apartment in the garage, we have no record of a zoning approval for that, you have to go before the zoning board. Mr. Kim contacts me, we start doing a little bit of homework. And again, before Mr. Kim starts explaining what happened, I'd like to give at least a little bit of the documentary, what at least we know from the documentary record about this property. What you have before you as a subject property timeline has key dates starting, at least based on the tax card that was obtained from the tax assessor, the zoning approvals that were granted for this property, as well as the deeds. And Bernie, I'm looking at you because your name pops up in here 34 years ago. So I'm sure you remember every one of these that you've done over the years.
It just shows how old he is.
You've been doing it a long time. Okay. What we know from the tax card is that the home, the primary home, and I believe this garage was built in 1935. In 1958,
Let's go back. When you say you believe, why?
on the card, on the tax card,
Which one am I looking
if
at?
you look at tab 1, you'll see that there's 2 tax cards.
Right.
One for the primary home, and the second card is for the accessory structure. What makes this the card relevant is that it appears to indicate that the garage was inspected by the tax department or assessed in 2002, indicating that a portion of it was a car garage and a portion of it was improved as living space. So at least from the documentary record that we're able to compile, 2002 is the earliest date we know that this apartment was recognized by the tax department. Not saying it was zoning, we have no record of ever getting a zoning approval for this apartment, but at least it was assessed as living space. So that's relevant given how this property was flipped a variety of times. But the basics. So
What I'm trying to get, do you have any idea when the garage was actually built?
on the tax card, it says 1935.
It doesn't, the
that's accurate.
subdivision doesn't ever mention it.
No, we're gonna get to that.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna get to
Sorry.
that. We think we know who did the conversion, and maybe because you all have lived in this town, you know him or them, but we'll get to that. So basically, 1935, these structures were built. 1958, they were acquired by Joseph and Nicolina Janarone. The Janarones owned this property for many years. In 1981, 1982, the Janarones appeared before the planning board, got a subdivision approval. They subdivided, so 9, they became 9 and 9.01. This property is 9. That was my mistake in preparing this document. 2 years after the subdivision, the Janarones sold the property to Angelo and Maria Kerkes. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
It's Corky's.
Corky's. That was Bernie's client. About a little less than 2 years later, the Querkeys sold it to Joseph and Elise Campolo while those 2 individuals were married, and that's relevant. Why I'm saying these 2 individuals were married when they bought Lot 9.
I have to interrupt again. Do we know if the garage is there yet?
We don't know because when the planning board,
Answer the
if
question.
you look at the tab 2, you'll see there was an original subdivision approval, the planning board amended it, there's also a survey. There's nothing in the the resolutions of the planning board that suggest that there was an apartment. It showed the garage, no mention that there was an apartment there. So we can surmise that in 1981, 1982, when this property was before the planning board, there was no apartment in that garage. It was just a
Was there a garage there?
if you look at the survey that's on tab 2, the first, which is the first page of tab 2, it's the Joseph Barbieri survey, which is stamped by the planning board.
Okay.
You'll see a home, and
All
then
right.
you'll see a large driveway, and then
The garage.
the garage.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Have you questioned Mr. Janarone at all on this?
No, because
Because why?
we don't know who he is.
You don't know who he is?
I mean, again,
Did you ever hear of Janarone Field up on Route 46?
Sorry.
Okay.
I know he's.
Long time, forestry in the town, and his son works for the town. And I'll give you another little tidbit of information that might explain some of this.
Mhm.
His late wife, Nicolina, had a place called Nicky's Bridals. And my guess is that the size of that garage is where Nicky's Bridals was
Operating.
operated
It was a
at.
business.
It was a business,
That's
yes,
exactly correct.
right?
It's
See,
correct.
given the short sale nature of how Mr. Kim
Mhm.
got it, that institutional memory, at least from his side of the bargain, is lost. You all know it because you've lived in town and you know these people. But now that makes a lot of sense. We're going just from what we could pull from the public records.
Mm-hmm.
So now, back on the timeline. So the Quirkies, did I say that, Bernie? The Quirkies sold it to the Campolos in December of 1985. The Campolos owned it together as husband and wife for 19 years. It's relevant that the deeds mention that there was a divorce judgment, I believe somewhere in the descriptions that they were required to sell this property. And when they did sell the property in 2004 to Hee-sun and Suk-ya Hong, they sold it as unmarried. So they were compelled to sell it. Now, during that tenure between 1985 and 2004, that's where that tax card comes in that shows that the accessory building, there was living space there. So we surmise, can I prove it? No. We surmise that that space, which may have been a bridal shop, was converted to living space by the Campolos. We can't, it's all circumstantial and just based on what we can judge from the record. Now that I've given the board that extremely long-winded introduction, I'd like to have Mr. Kim sworn to explain the due diligence he went into in buying this property, which is actually much more than most people do. So, Mr. Kim, if you can get up and swear, raise your hand.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. You can have a seat.
Okay. Now, Mr. Kim, you've heard my introduction, the board's comments. Now, explain to the board how it is you found out about this property, how you negotiated for the property, your visits to the town hall to do your due diligence. Give the board an explanation of how you at least try to figure out whether you should invest as an investment property in this property.
My real estate broker approached me that there is a property available which could be a good sale, good buy because it's a short sale, and yes, I will take a look and I look
Speak
at it.
into the mic, please, Omar.
I look, and then I came to Parsippany, which is a little a drive from where I live. I liked it, so I made an offer. It was accepted. But it was a short sale, there might be some shortcomings or whatever it could be. So I, decided to do some homework. So I checked, I came to town hall, and I checked the tax records, tax was all paid and everything is in good order as it reads, all the bedrooms and things, living spaces were listed in the tax record. But I went to the building department, but I was surprised that there was a permit pending, which has been sitting there for several years, like 7 years, which is a plumbing issue. So I went back to the seller through the broker and then there is an issue with the plumbing still pending. So they say, they were, look like a reliable people. I told them, okay, I will take care of it, and then you're gonna pay me later. And then I took care of it. And this is the plumbing permit that I got. I paid for it, but I was not paid by the seller. And then I tried to contact them, but since I have this issue, they don't even answer the phone.
Is that plumbing permit for the main structure or the secondary structure?
I'm sorry?
Is the plumbing permit for the main house?
Main house, yes.
So you had to close out the open permit and pay the fees for that permit?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And also, at the closing, I got a fire department inspection certificate, so I thought everything is fine. And then I didn't even, imagine that there could be any other issues.
Okay.
But
Now tell the board about your dispute, and that's kind of a harsh word, but the issue you had with your neighboring property owner.
at this moment, actually, I have to appreciate that whoever it is, the individual who filed the complaints about this space now, it's now I know that it has the latent issue, but now I have to face it, I have to solve it. Actually, a couple years ago, I happened to know that my backyard was kind of heavily wet after the rain, so I thought it's very strange. And then I happened to find out that the water coming from the neighbor, about 6-7 inches black pipe, end up along the fence where it's very low relatively from other areas, and then water comes down there. So I haven't met my neighbor, and I wrote a letter first, kindly enough, saying that, you shouldn't do this. We like to have a good relationship, so would you fix it? No response. So I happened to find the phone number from the neighbor, from the landscaper, and then I text him again. I wrote a letter. I'm wondering if you received it or not, but it's not fixed yet, so would you please take care of it? No response. So I called him, and then I explained the same thing. He said, okay, I didn't know. My landscaper must have done it, but I will fix it. I will let my landscaper take care of it. Several months after, I thought everything was done, but nothing happened. So I knocked on his door, and then he was home. I say the same thing. But he said, why my water wet your backyard? Now, whatever I did so far didn't get anywhere. So I was a little upset because I was so disappointed. He can say that, I'm sorry, I was busy, I couldn't take care of it, but I will. But he just changed his mind. He said, I didn't do anything wrong. Why you blame me for that? So I was so upset. So I told him that I may need an attorney. That's what I said. I didn't call. I didn't find any attorney for that. I thought, that's enough, so he will fix it. But now it is okay. So maybe I know that when I received the violation letter, that thing popped up to me that, okay, he might have done it. But, until then, I didn't find anything that I was doing wrong or I violated anything. But now, at this moment, I'm ready to face it. I have to fix it, but it's existing, which I wasn't aware. I bought it as a 5-bedroom, 3.5 bathrooms, as listed in the multiple listing. So,
Mr. Kim, what I've handed the board copies of 12 photographs, which you took. You took all these photographs, correct?
this one, I think John did.
John
Yeah.
took these?
Mhm.
Okay. Then you know what, but what I want you to do, John is going to go through them in detail later, but can you give the board an explanation of what is physically out there today? what comprises the main house, what comprises the fixed-up accessory structure. Kind of walk the board through, at least let them know what's out there today, what's improved out there today. And if you can go through page 1, page 2, like that way, just explain to the board what they're looking at.
Okay, this, the page 1 is the side of the main house, which is facing, what's the main road?
46.
Yeah. Old Bloomfield Avenue.
And Old Bloomfield runs parallel with
Yeah,
46.
right. And then second is kind of angled from east and north.
And
It's actually now it's a new entrance. This house, old house, used to face the old Bloomfield Road. Now, after they added second story with the 3 more bedrooms and 2 more bathrooms in 1995. So my best guess is that they might have used the garage apartment before they added second story, because it used to be a 1-bedroom small house.
So the main house was a 1-story, 1-bedroom house, which was then expanded.
Right.
As far as you can tell from your research.
Yes.
Okay.
As you can see, first page, the lower part is the original main house, and then second is the addition in 1995.
Now, looking at the second page, is the accessory
Yeah,
structure
at
on
the
the
second
right-hand side?
page, that behind the lights, there is a garage. To me, it looks like same old as the garage itself, the apartment. Inside, interiors and everything is so obsolete. There is the bathing shower booth also, but it is so wearing out. It's very, very old. And then page 3 is the garage front face. One side is garage door, the other one is living space, windows. Everything, all the structures, exterior, interior, I can't tell any difference which one is the older one.
So you're saying the construction of the apartment and the accessory structure is consistent with what you're finding in the main house?
Yes. And next page is the front face of the house. The left side is the living room and kind of dinette, and right side is the small door, that's the entrance door. And upper level, there are 3 bedrooms there.
That was the addition.
Yes, that's the addition in 1995.
That picture, this is still facing Old Bloomfield Avenue?
Would you say there's 5 bedrooms in the house now, main house?
It, including actually, I didn't actually figure out, but
The question is, are there 5 bedrooms now in the main house, or are you counting?
4
the bedroom
bedrooms.
in
4
the main
bedrooms,
house
yeah.
And 1 bedroom
As
in
the
the
tax
apartment?
record says,
There's how many baths?
How many baths total?
2.5 in the main building.
You rent this house to a family? I mean, is it occupied now?
Yes, it is occupied. The main building.
main house.
Yes.
Is the apartment in the garage accessory structure, is that rented or is it vacant now?
It's vacant now. Just a few days after the violation, I told them to vacate it, and then.
So was
it
this
is-
the family that's renting the main house, were they also occupying the garage apartment? It was one lease for both spaces?
One lease for both spaces,
But
yes.
when you told them that there's an issue, they left?
Yes, yes.
And so now it's vacant, okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a layout of the small house, that secondary house? Do we have a,
Are these pictures of the
Basically, on the
No, it's the main house.
tax record as.
No, do you have a floor plan of the improved part of the garage? Do you have a floor plan? Maybe John can explain it.
Yeah.
Based on what he
I
knows.
think he has
The-
a
the pictures-
pictures inside.
The pictures of these pictures now of the kitchen and the dining room, those are all within the accessory apartment. These are, the inside pictures are not the main house, these are all within the accessory structure, correct?
No,
No?
they look big.
I think there are some pictures.
There's some colored pictures
Yeah,
here.
original. There are some interior pictures of the garage studio
I'm
apartment.
going to hand the chairman the color photographs that Mr. McDonough took. Oh, those are from Mr. McDonough's report. Excellent. But I'll also hand you this. This is A2, but the color version. Perhaps they'll be a little bit clearer.
I'm still confused. The pictures we're looking at on A2.
Yes.
Are they taken in the main structure in the house or in the garage?
Can you answer that?
This one?
Yeah,
These are main structure.
This is the main structure?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any pictures from inside the accessory
I
structure?
think John made some.
Those are not mine.
Yeah, this is.
I have my own.
I
Oh.
think I sent.
You sent
maybe
me
I
this.
sent it to you, and
But-
then John took.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's just clear up. The pictures that you sent me,
Yeah.
did you take them?
Yes.
So do you remember where you took them?
Sorry, I thought you copied the John's.
No,
picture.
these are the
Yeah,
ones you gave
I
me.
think I did send. you.
So these pictures, the board is asking, are these pictures of the main house or
Main
the
house.
accessory?
Main
Okay,
house,
so
yes.
you don't have any inside pictures of the accessory apartment?
That's
John
I
has
think John
it.
has it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was confused.
I think it's included.
In Mr.
the-
McDonough's
I
report.
have a question about
Yeah.
this picture here. It says, view of interior of the unit with finished flooring, half bath, and kitchen. There's more than one bathroom in the place?
No.
So what is a half what's a half bathroom?
That is main building.
What is it?
What is this?
Which?
Describe-
Can I see?
It's
it?
in
Tell me
Mr.
what's in the half bath.
Describe the bathroom that's
Describe
in the
the
accessory
bathroom.
apartment. Describe it. Is there a toilet?
There's a
sink?
toilet and a small sink
Mhm.
and shower booth.
Is it a stand-up
shower.
shower?
Yeah.
But there's no
Why are you
bathtub.
calling it a half
No
bath?
bathtub.
Why are you calling it a half bath?
You,
if
you
it's got a
described it
shower?
as a half bath, but usually the parlance is if there's a sink, toilet, and shower, it's a full bath. If you only have a sink and a toilet, that's a half bath in real estate parlance.
Okay.
You didn't know that? Okay, so yeah, that's a full
I
bath.
I don't
Okay,
think
so-
I don't think I described any details.
Here, three fixture bed.
If it's
I
described
don't
as a
know
half bath, then
the
that's a
exact
mistake.
terminology in real estate.
Yeah.
What you
But basically, that's the story that Mr. Kim has. Now, we have Mr. McDonough that, can give all the professional testimony, but we at least wanted to give the board the benefit of, obviously, the board may actually know the owners, as the chairman clearly does, the former owners, but we do think that the apartment, since it wasn't described by the planning board in 1981-82, we don't think that apartment was there. And we don't think
It
the business
wasn't,
was
it was
there.
Nikki's Bridals.
Yeah.
And the only question is, when did Nicolina die? Because then the business would have been, and I don't know if she died before or after they sold the property. Well,
We
they
do
sold
know-
the property together.
Yeah,
So
they
she
sold it
was
together,
still
so they were
alive.
still around.
So until the Janarones moved out, that was not an apartment. It was a business.
So they sold it at
84, and I remember, and then she must have died soon there. What do you think, Bernie? You
They
remember?
left there and moved into Powder Mill Estates North, and she died.
She died in Powder Mill.
She died in Powder Mill, was only there for about a year and a half or 2 years. So they built this big, beautiful new home, and she never really got to enjoy it, okay?
And we
So
just-
that was in 84, I believe.
And look, from the timing alone, we don't think the Quirkies converted it because they only owned it for
Short time.
this short time, maybe less than 2 years. So maybe they did. The more likely it looked like it was the Campolos. And that
Well, he
would've been
probably just moved into the garage when they were having trouble.
the Felix Unger, the Felix Unger city.
We are not
On
going
November-
back there.
On November 13th.
But if,
No, it
If
didn't
you
have,
look-
it didn't have a business, it
Yeah.
had a hardwood floor in there, and it had that somehow or other bathroom of some sort, and he just made it residential. There wasn't any conversions. Is there separate utilities to this garage, or is it connected from the main house?
It is connected to main house, but there is a separate. I wouldn't say separate, but there is a meter to read whatever they use.
There's a sub-meter that-
inside the
Electric or
garage.
water?
electric or water, the sub-meter, at least what you think.
Yeah.
Electrical or water?
Electrical.
Electrical.
Yeah. Water is one main meter.
How about the sewer, how's that work, do you know?
That I have no idea.
Do you get more than one bill?
Yes.
You get more, you get two bills?
Just
water
one
bills?
bill.
You get one bill.
One bill.
Get one bill for water and
Yeah.
sewer.
Any other questions of this witness? Any
I have
member-
a
Oh, yes,
question,
go
one
right
more
ahead.
question. When you bought the property, you got a smoke detector certification, correct?
Yes.
Did you get one or two?
One from that's why I didn't know that I have to get another one as soon as I get the tenant, but before
Well,
closing.
when you got the one, it was for the garage and the house? When you bought the house, you got one,
Just one, yes.
so that included, was the garage apartment inspected by the fire inspector?
I assume it includes everything. That's why, as I said earlier,
so-
I
okay.
got a, fire department certificate which covers, I believe, everything.
So let me understand too, so you were renting this the house and the garage to one family?
Yes.
And then when you told them, so they had a daughter or a son or somebody living in the garage?
Yes.
But it was still the same family, is that right?
Same family, yes.
And then when you told them you can't live there anymore because we got a complaint, they moved into the regular house?
Did they
Yes.
vacate the garage
Yeah,
apartment when
yes.
you told them to get?
And they are waiting now.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but you had originally rented it as two separate units to the one family,
No, I think it was one lease that covered both.
two buildings?
Two buildings, one lease. So they were getting the extra living space in the garage.
How does the lease work? The main guy can sublease the other unit?
In the lease that you have with your residential tenant, is there a sublease? Can he sublease or assign the garage to another family or somebody else?
To be honest, I haven't read it.
Would-
I didn't mention about any separate space or anything.
Did you use an all
Do you have any
lease?
condition in the lease that they cannot sublease that portion?
I just signed, it's a standard lease, so I guess they can, right?
Did you use an all-state form lease? You know what an all-state form lease? Do you have a copy of the lease?
I think I have it somewhere.
Well, yeah, is it one, if it's one family, is it one lease for both?
There's one lease that covered the
Yeah,
the whole
it was a
property.
standard, I
So they
thought.
could live in the main house and the garage
Well,
apartment.
it's not
I
being
have
used
it.
as a two-family.
No, no. I mean, ideally, that would be a great result, but it hasn't been used as a two-family as far as we know. It's been used one, the additional living space, like almost like a mother-daughter, but it's actually just it's a separated extension of the main house.
Mother door with air between.
Yeah. Yeah. So usually, if you use the form lease,
Yeah.
chances are it says no subletting without your consent.
Okay.
So that's the standard.
How many kitchens in this main house?
One kitchen?
So you have a kitchen in the main house, one kitchen in the main house?
Yeah.
Is there a separate kitchen in the garage apartment?
I wouldn't call it kitchen, but the profane gas stove and the sink.
They have a propane or a natural gas stove?
Propane.
They have a tank?
Yeah, tank.
So they have a stove, a sink, is there a refrigerator in there?
Yes.
Dishwasher?
No dishes.
There's a picture of it in the paper, in
But-
today. You can see the kitchen in one of the pictures.
We just gotta make sure it's not the pictures of the main house.
No, this is a.
If it was in
very
Mr.
small-
McDonough's report, that's the apartment.
This is John McDonough's, there's no dishwasher.
Well, the thing that makes it two families, two stoves.
No, there's one in the main house and one in the second house.
So it's two stoves.
Two stoves, yeah.
So the house was listed when you bought it as the property you bought was listed as 5 bedroom, 3 bath? Is that what you testified?
Yeah, 5 and 3.5.
So they
3.5.
combined the two
I-
living spaces?
That's what I guess.
It
I
wasn't
didn't-
listed as a
I didn't go
two-family
by
house. It
one
wasn't.
by one, but
And that listing, if you go on like Google Archive, you can still see it, and it does say 5 bedroom, 3.5 bath.
3.5.
half
Where's
bath.
the half bath?
I don't know.
So it's
Main
4
house.
baths.
so
Maybe in the main house, there's a half bath.
in the main house, 2.5.
Turned
So
out.
there's one bathroom doesn't have a bathtub.
There's a
Just
shower.
a stand-up shower.
Yeah, just the
Toilet.
But
toilet and the sink.
Sink, yeah, that's a half bath.
Yeah, that's.
And that's in the main house.
house, yeah. half.
Call that a
That's
private
why main house has 2.5 and the extension
Yes.
has one full bed.
One full, correct.
Right, can I, What are you asking us to do? You asked us to make it a two-family?
Ideally, that would be.
Or are you just making that?
Well, right now-
You're asking us to make that apartment a legal part of the one family?
Yeah, right now, as far as we can tell, that has been used as an extension of, it's a one-family zone, it's not a two-family zone. We have no historical record that there ever been two families, separate families, renting it.
What we do
What we do-
know,
what we do- what we
it
do-
was a legal conversion, and you're trying to get it legalized. Simple as that.
Because right now.
Because it's legalized.
And the land use thing is basically, they're asking you to put two principal structures on the lot, and both, it'd be separate households.
I mean, that is,
That's
that would be
physically
kind of,
what
that would
they're-
be.
But the testimony is that it's not a separate household. It's one
It
household.
hasn't been, it could be, if it's separately metered and adjustments can be made, it could be two separate families. It hasn't been that way to date. It's always been, at least during Mr. Kim's tenure as owner, it's been rented to one family who uses both spaces.
So
Now,
what's the
right now,
violation? What's the violation?
The violation is, in Parsippany, I don't believe it's permitted to have living space within an accessory structure.
Well,
So-
violations, you convert it to two residential principal structures.
Right.
One big, one little, but
But
they're
if it's,
separate.
I
and
believe even if it's considered one residential use, but it's the residential use within an accessory structure, which is a violation in and of itself. Whether it's rented by one family or two families, it's a
I
violation.
don't wanna get into the.
So the violation though is that you have living quarters in a separate structure, which is not approved.
Correct. Now, if there was some type of a breezeway connecting these two, so it's one structure, maybe then it's legal. But
Yeah,
they're
you've got
sep-
two kitchens.
Yeah.
Can't have
Then
two
that's the second,
kitchens.
right.
Two
So-
kitchens
There's no
means.
shower in this other one, right?
There is.
There is.
There's a stand-up.
It's full
So, long story short, since Mr. Kim bought it, it's more valuable. If he could at least keep it, the disaster scenario is if he'd have to tear it all out and turn it into a two-car garage. That's the disaster scenario, which we're hoping to avoid.
What if you just took the stove out?
Would that be possible if you remove the stove from the accessory, so it's just used by one family? Because in Parsippany, if you have a second kitchen, it could be rented to a second family. So is that, would you be willing to entertain that?
If I have to, but
Put a
hopefully I
microwave in
can.
Yeah.
Just to keep it same way.
Well, how does that overcome the living quarter?
It doesn't. A use variance from this board is the only way to overcome that.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
So
Now,
that's what you're asking for.
Yeah, it's actually an ideal situation if you have like a mother-daughter. I mean, it's perfectly fit for that. But right
That's
now,
not what we're talking about.
It hasn't been rented that way. It's been rented just one family that gets the extra space.
That's not what you're asking us to approve right now.
We're asking you to approve a use variance to allow the living space to remain. If the board is willing to entertain to allow two separate families, that would be great. But we just really want to maintain what's there.
Mother family also, it is called a two-family, right?
Two family is when it's two separate families. Mother-daughter is when it's an extension of one family. When you have, like, if an elderly mother comes to live with her daughter, she has her own little separate space to live, but it's really one family. It's one family, single family. That's
Not in zoning, it isn't.
In Parsippany, it's considered two families.
Yeah.
But two family, and then the restrictions are added as to how you can use the two family, which is what we did a couple months ago with the Longs. Type of
Just
situation.
to clarify, there's a shower in this other one?
Yes, a stand-up shower.
Because I'm reading Mr. Chadwick's report, and it says just toilet and sink.
That half bath is in the main house. The sink, toilet,
That is-
stand-up.
That is two
which
and
is
a
a
half
full
Why
bath.
why don't we get
that
Mr.
report is
McDonough to
anything
describe
but
what's
shower.
there?
Okay.
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, so,
He's been in the building, so.
I'm sorry?
no, Mr. McDonough's gonna come and
Okay.
explain what he saw, because he went in there.
Any members of the public have any questions of Mr. Kim before we let him go? I hear none, see none.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. McDonough, if you could please raise your right hand. You swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Any licenses been revoked in the last half an hour?
No.
No? Okay, good, thank you.
And now, John, you had the benefit of a lot of additional facts.
Yes.
With that, so basically what I, you're gonna do your thing, but what I'd like you to do is kind of explain what's out there now in terms from a planning perspective, how it's being used, how you think it could be used successfully in this neighborhood, given its location, the surroundings, and the planning rationale if the board were to consider it to be a two-family situation. So I'll let you take it from there.
So there are distinct characteristics of this particular piece of property, and having done a number of applications here in town, I know that two families are not favored. In fact, they're heavily disfavored. It's a rare circumstance when we see a two-family approved here, and the few that I've been involved with are pieces of property that have had some sort of unique association with them over a period of time. And I think you've heard that here. We have some sort of interesting characteristics with this particular piece of property. This is a property that is on Old Bloomfield Avenue, Old Bloomfield Road, so it runs parallel to Route 46. There are influences on this property that we don't see on the other residential uses in the neighborhood. Interestingly, this is the site that's right across from Paul Miller, where all the improvements are now taking place. So there are some non-residential influences that are atypical of a residential use that may imply somewhat of a higher intensity of use. This is also a building, as you've heard, that actually fronts and faces on Old Bloomfield Road. It's not part of a neighborhood. There are the two cul-de-sacs that work their way back, but this is one of the remnant pieces that actually faces that main higher order roadway, again, which may lend itself to a higher intensity of use than the typical single-family dwelling. Interestingly, if you work your way back into those two cul-de-sacs there, the homes are all of newer construction. This is a home that goes back to the 1930s where the detached structures were commonplace. Every one of those other homes in the area have an attached garage. So to the extent that if there was some favorable action here from the board, that this would be precedent setting or open up a possibility for additional two-family uses in the neighborhood, I think the board can draw a nice line around this particular application that it relates to a particular site with a building that is sort of tucked off by itself in the corner of this property. And I don't know if we need to re-hand these out. I put together some...
The board has copies of your report attached to their...
Okay, so if any of the board members need additional copies, I did provide photographs with the application when we went into the building itself, the accessory building itself. And there are attributes of that building that lend itself well to residential use also. It is positioned in a corner of the property, so it doesn't interfere with the use, the privacy, the enjoyment of the main structure. There's a nice backyard right behind the main structure, and this is not a case where that accessory structure is sitting in the backyard, but again, it's off to the side and out of the way, and it's got its own little privacy area. The site has a very large driveway associated with it, so there's certainly adequate space to accommodate the parking that would be associated with, I'll say, an additional dwelling unit on the property. And then another very distinct characteristic of this property is the older vegetation, the mature vegetation that runs along the property parallel to where this particular building is. Evergreen foliage, it's nicely established, that really gives this building a nice privacy element that we may not see with a typical garage. It's not out there in the view of the public realm, but tucked in a corner, nicely buffered and away from where it could be, I'd say, encumbered by other active uses. So a nice private space lends itself very well to a small residential type of use. In terms of the actual relief that the applicant would need here, this is what we're calling a D1 variance. I'm calling it a two-family. I don't know any other way to categorize it in a one-family zone. This is the R3 zone. None of your residential zones go beyond the one family, or your basic residential zones go beyond the one family. This is the R3 zone, where 15,000 square feet is the minimum requirement. This lot does have additional land mass associated with it, so there is some spatiality, I'll say, to accommodate that additional use as well. But in terms of the legal proofs on the positive side, we see that there are influences, again, on this particular piece of property that are atypical of the area, and the fact that there are non-residential uses immediately opposite and a higher order roadway that this property faces on it does lend itself to somewhat of a transitional use between the pure one-family units and the non-residential units that are on the other side of it. It provides an alternate housing option, and we see these smaller units being attractive to, I'll say, a different demographic than perhaps the traditional family. We're talking about students, we're talking about divorcees or recent divorcees, empty nesters, widowers, those type of individuals that may be looking for a smaller space. It's only 524 square feet. It doesn't come with all the maintenance of the property as well, but it is your own independent living unit. When one walks into the building, it is very comfortable and very conducive to residential use, and I know the board had questions about those photographs that were entered, but we did provide in the report photographs of the physical space, and when you walk in, you encounter a very nice living room. Then there are 2 rooms in the back. There's the kitchen area, which includes both a stove, a sink area, refrigerator. There's no dishwasher that I can see. And then off of the kitchen, there's a small bedroom area. And then what we had called a half bath, but I agree, it's actually a full bath to the extent that it does have the shower space. It doesn't have a tub, but it does have the shower space.
You don't have
So
a picture of the bedroom space here, right?
the bedroom space, if you're looking at what I put on page number 3,
Got it.
photograph number 3, the bedroom is actually not shown. I see that now. It would be off to the right of the kitchen.
Is that the bump out in the back?
That is the extension of, I believe it is, yes. I did not actually check to see if that was part of the bump out. Very well could be.
This bath, shower you're talking about, how does this work? Is there a real shower there, or do you just turn the thing on and the bathroom becomes a shower?
I'm trying to remember when we walked in, I didn't check to see if it was operational or not, but I can't remember if there was a cover over the actual shower itself. The base structure is there. So I'm told you can actually take a physical shower.
All right, Mr.
We
McDonough.
don't really know then. We kind of
I don't know
fuzzy.
I don't remember if you could.
How about utilities? Do you have any idea on this?
Yeah, as I understand it, the fit up is there, it's ready to go, yes.
What do you mean the fit up?
The fit up for water, sewer, all of those hookups are there.
And are they, he said he got one bill for, you have water sewer bill, right?
Yeah,
Combined.
water and sewer bill.
So he's
Electricity?
getting one bill,
For the property.
so,
So I don't know that they're metered separately, no. It sounds like they're not metered separately.
Right.
But the infrastructure obviously is there to serve.
and somebody put a secondary meter on there so the electric can be billed to the
Yes.
tenant. They can know how much they use.
Yes.
And so, this picture with the garage, so there's still a garage here on the one side, the living quarters on the other side. Is that
That's correct. You would enter from that photograph, you would enter to the left if you
Got it.
saw the
Okay.
garage doors.
So what's in the garage? The garage?
Storage.
Just storage.
I did not see a vehicle in there. I saw storage in
Okay.
there.
And then it's behind that the bedroom is.
Correct.
Okay. So this unit then, the living space there, how's it heated?
I'll have to defer to the applicant in that regard.
There's a room air conditioner in the wall.
I see the air
It's got
conditioner.
baseboard heating.
Come on
There's
up.
baseboard heating there.
Baseboard heating?
Might be electric heating, who knows?
Yeah, it could be
Window,
electric.
window type air conditioning and electric baseboard.
Electric baseboard?
Yes.
So there's an electric meter separate for this structure?
No.
He said yes.
I thought he said yes
It-
earlier.
Is there a sub-meter? Are you aware if there's a separate?
I
electric sub-meter?
believe it's,
The
it's
two electric bills
working
come to the
meter,
property?
but there is a meter.
On this building?
I mean, yes.
Okay.
But you only get one electric bill?
One electric bill, one water bill.
No.
If
2
you have
meters
two-
mean
If you have 2
bills.
meters, you need to have 2 bills, I think.
Yeah.
No, that's, I don't know. As
I
an
was just
amateur, I
following
didn't,
Okay.
This unit, how much juice
Bill
went
could
in.
have 2 meters.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's a sub-meter where it's
But
up to the landlord to decide.
I
that
checked with
electric-
my licensed electrician that the main, the electricity is coming under the ground and then to this garage.
So there's an underground
Oh.
conduit that
Yes,
feeds.
yes.
Yeah, whatever you tell the utility, that's what they're gonna do.
So I just want to propose one thing here. You bought the property as a one family kind of thing. You're not trying to make it 2 families. So my question would be, if you had a deed restriction that only one family could be living on this property, could you do that?
The question is, would you accept a condition that you would maintain the improvements, but condition it so that only one family could rent both? You couldn't have two separate tenants for both spaces. Would that be acceptable to you?
Yeah.
Couldn't have anybody unrelated on the property,
Right.
basically.
Well, definition of single family, people living as a group.
So if somebody bought the property and they want to have a family member living out in the garage, so be it, okay?
Yeah.
If that was approved, that would be a restriction.
Yes.
Did you live with that?
Yes.
And the only other question is, do you maintain a full kitchen back there?
Well, considering it's so separate from the main dwelling, I think you probably need it.
Yeah, I think you need it, but then it makes it
If it is a kitchen,
Define it any way we
predictable
want.
that you could be rented. You know? If you had them take out the stove, they could always put a stove back in.
Well, Mr. Kevin, we want to
Throw a
try and
microwave in there.
facilitate your need here, but just because you didn't know these things, don't make it right that it should be approved, okay? You're aware of that, right?
He's saying that just because you didn't know, the ignorance of what the reality was doesn't mean you're entitled to something that you may not be entitled to.
So we're trying to maybe propose something that would be acceptable and workable for you and for us to be able to approve some kind of variance here in compliance, so you won't be in
Sure, I'll be
violation.
happy to, whatever.
So what Mr. Williams is suggesting is that if the board were to consider a use variance that would allow you to maintain the improvements, the living space, but it would be with a deed restriction that says it cannot be two separate families, that the space has to be occupied by a single family.
and also what about the second kitchen?
And, excuse me?
One family, one kitchen.
Removing the stove element from the garage? Okay, and that would include a condition that you would have to remove the stove from the accessory. So you'd have a sink, but you couldn't prepare food in there. Would that be acceptable?
If I have a choice, I'd like to have
I don't see why a
it's
stove
the
can't
propane.
stay. I don't agree with
It's a
Yeah,
propane.
I could see it.
Because then it's just a matter of, and because you don't have a stove, you put a microwave in there and cook almost anything in a microwave, other than maybe a lasagna.
Kinda sad, but,
And even a frozen one.
yeah.
I suppose.
I mean, it would be ideal.
I think your basic control is it doesn't grow. This thing came about, somebody illegally converted it for whatever reason, and all of a sudden we got another whole bay over here that's got nothing but a wall between it. And 10 years from now, this is no longer a 525 square foot apartment, it's a 1,050 square foot apartment. So I think that's the condition you want to put in. That's enforceable.
Yeah.
Taking a stove out, putting the stove back in, what are you gonna have, the zoning officer running around counting stoves? No.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I
But-
agree.
But you can easily see garage doors going away.
So, are you proposing another restriction in this?
I propose a basic restriction that as it was
Well-
presented, the space used of 525 square feet
Right.
is it.
Yeah.
Do you understand that? What he's saying is that part of the restriction under this proposal,
If we
was
approve
that you
it.
could not expand the apartment, you couldn't eliminate the garage
not
and
listing it as
only
a
create a
non-
larger apartment. You'd be limited to what's there. That's acceptable? That would be acceptable. Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. McDonough, were you through? I don't even.
I think I was, I had hit the positives, the negatives. All I was gonna say about the
While you're
negatives,
ahead.
it's going to look like a one family. See, this is not one of those two families where you have two doors, two mailboxes. It's going to look and feel like a one family. It's
And
got
it'll be one
nice,
family with
nice
this
capacity.
restriction.
So I don't see this as being detrimental to the area or the zone plan.
Any other questions of Mr. McDonough? Any
Can
members?
you access the garage from the unit?
No, not that I'm aware of.
From the apartment.
Is there a door where you can go from the 524 square foot apartment physically into the car garage? Can you get?
No.
You have to go from the outside? Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
That'd be part of the restriction too.
Any members of the public have any questions? I don't see many members of the public that seem to be interested anyway. Any other witnesses?
No, sir.
Do you want a sum or do you want?
I believe the board fully understands what the situation is and what we're asking for, and we do appreciate if the board would indulge the applicant and allow him to at least get the
State
benefit of his
stipulations.
investment.
Any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? I hear none, see none. Someone make a motion to go into conference? I think we should at least discuss this one.
I move we go into conference.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Want to start down there, Mr. Passat? Do you have any comments or feelings on this?
I think we should consider the application.
Mr. Reddy?
Yeah, is applicant not aware of the situation when he bought the house through short sale or whatever, but to legalize, he has compromised to many of the board members' acceptance, so I'm in favor of this.
Yes, a point of clarity legally maybe, or zoning, Mr. Chadwick, I made the proposal, but the violation is that we can't have living quarters in the outside building in our town. Is that correct?
Well, effectively, under zoning, they're asking for a two-family use of the property.
But
Usually, we think of two-family in one building,
Right.
but it's two buildings. They-
One family.
Each one of them is a dwelling unit. So we are approving a two-family use with the circumstances John McDonough described. It is unusual. And you either accept my suggestion about absolutely no expansion of this thing.
So two restrictions would be no expansion and only one family, okay, occupying the premises.
Yeah.
In the restriction, deed restriction,
Yeah.
okay. In those cases, I think if Mr. Kim would accept that, we could have some leeway, and I'd probably go along with that.
Mr. Kaplan?
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it, but I do think those restrictions that Mr. Willens just mentioned are fair and reasonable, so I can vote yes with that.
I agree. I think the object here is to maintain the property the way it is, as the land that's occupied by one family. They just happen to have an apartment aside from the main building, and so it's really not a two-family. It's just a one-family with two residences.
Just one more question for my clarification too. On the violation, is there any issue with fire or escape route or any other issues for that unit that has been cited here? Okay, all right, okay, thank you.
Well, there's some of us that go back to the 80s here, and some of us who have known Mr. Janaron Sr. for as many years as I can remember, and some of us remember Nikki's Bridals. And obviously, if you had all the puzzle pieces, you put it together, and most likely that building was used as a commercial building.
I know that's fact.
Okay, you know that as a fact. Anyway, now as to whether that was an approved use or not,
Probably not.
probably. But
Probably predates the zone.
that tells us that this was converted sometime after 1984, and our zoning book goes back to what, the 40s, Mr.?
52.
1952. So obviously, this is not the typical second building on a property, and we do have some of them in town. I've been here when we've legalized some of those, and I'll bring back the story about Mr. Cannengeiser, who was an attorney who was about 100 years old when he came and testified, and he remembered when the property, this particular property was converted, the one I was talking about at that time. So there's no evidence that this predates zoning. It was done illegally. I'm not happy with it. I'm not going to vote for it. Motion to come out of conference?
So
moved.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Someone want to frame a resolution?
Do we have enough?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, I'll
You got
go.
5.
Okay.
Application 19:44. Young Kim, 296 Old Bloomfield Avenue, Block 626, Lot 9, Zone R3, to issue a grant D variance to legalize the second dwelling unit with restrictions as agreed by the board as well as the client.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Mr. Berkowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan.
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
Mr. Willens.
Yes.
Chairman Irakane.
No. Result is 5 in favor, correct? Variance is
Mr.
granted.
Prasad.
Before we
I
dismiss
apologize,
Mr.
yes.
Tambalakian, I just want to make sure that I have the conditions correct. I have 2 conditions. One, that there is a deed restriction where the primary and accessory structures can only be rented to one family. And number 2, the accessory structure cannot be modified in any way. For example, you cannot remove the garage element to increase the living space of the accessory structure.
That the living space would be limited to the 524
To
square.
as is.
Yes.
This client will sign a deed restriction.
Did I incorrectly recite any of that?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
2-minute break, and then we'll take on the next case, okay? You're gonna take it? Okay.
So do we have enough to do this here?
Have a good night.
Do you have, huh? How many we need?
This is a continuing application. It's been pointed out to me, there are only 5 members of the board, but we do have witnesses with us this evening and a little bit of time this evening, so we would like to produce some additional testimony and then just see where it goes from there. So with me is my traffic expert, Mr. Perry.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Your name, please?
My name is Craig Perigoy, P-E-R-E-G-O-Y.
P-E-R-E-G-O-Y.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill, do you want to voir dire Mr. Paraguay?
Sure, Mr. Paraguay. Could you give us, please, the benefit of your experience?
Sure, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Virginia Tech, licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've been working as a traffic engineer for almost 20 years now, and I've appeared on hundreds of occasions, including here in Parsippany, as an expert in traffic engineering.
I would submit Mr. Paraguay as an expert for traffic.
Status of your licenses, has anything been revoked, changed, or altered?
Everything's good.
I have no objection.
You
Thank
may proceed.
Mr. Paraguay, you're familiar with the report that was provided to this board regarding traffic and proposed traffic conditions?
Yes.
I wonder if you could go ahead and speak to that report and some of your additional findings.
Yeah, I understand Mr. Steiger at the last meeting went through the report in chief and generally covered the traffic impacts part of it. And from my understanding, there were 2 issues that the board wanted us to take a look at. One of those was the actual traffic generation of the existing shopping center. We had made a comparison of the residential use to the shopping center use based on the ITE trip generation rates. And obviously, the shopping center is underperforming. It is not, and that's one of the reasons that we're here seeking this redevelopment. So we did go out and take traffic counts at those shopping center driveways to get some actual on-the-ground data. And we looked at the morning and evening peak hours, same time periods that we did the traffic study for. And we found that the morning peak hour, that shopping center generated 56 trips. A trip is a vehicle either entering or exiting, whereas the ITE for that size would have said it would generate 187 trips. The evening peak hour generated, based on the counts, 100 trips. The ITE data would have suggested 421 trips, so we're well shy of that ITE data. Obviously, again, is one of the reasons that we're here looking to change the use on the property, because it is certainly underperforming. But if you compare those numbers, what it's generating now, to what the residential use will generate, it's a difference of 5 trips in the morning peak hour. The residential use would generate 61 morning peak hour trips versus the 56 we counted, so certainly not something that you would even notice. And we're still less in the evening peak hour, 22 less trips in the evening peak hour than what was counted. So it's maybe is not as dramatic as the comparison of the ITE to the ITE numbers, but still not a significant change in impact, even based on this underperforming shopping center, which obviously could change. You could put a Trader Joe's or something in there, and all of a sudden, it could pick up and start to generate closer to those numbers. Whereas when we're going with the 180 residential units, that's basically it. You take away that potential for it to start generating that level of traffic volume. So I think that was one of the issues that came up. The other one was the jug handle to the east. People leave in the morning, will probably use that jug handle to turn around and move a good bit of the traffic. And there was a concern about the queuing space that was available in there and if we would have any impact on that. So what we did was take a look at, in the morning, the queue length at that jug handle for every traffic signal cycle. So the maximum queue length at each signal cycle in the morning, and the maximum that we saw out there was 4 vehicles queued up.
So how many? 4?
4. And if I compare that to the analysis that we did in the traffic report, it showed the same thing. My existing analysis had about a 4 vehicle queue, so that does match up. We project a total of 25 trips in an hour to use that driveway. To use that jug handle. You can fit 12 more cars beyond the 4. There's 16 cars that can fit in that queue before it backs out on Route 10. So you can fit 12 more. So essentially, every signal cycle, it's a 110-second cycle, I should explain this. It's a 110-second signal cycle, so 32 times an hour there's a red indication there. So we're adding 25 trips, which is less than 1 per cycle. So realistically, you're looking at that queue going from 4 to maybe 5, 1 car per cycle. If I look at the calculation, again, I said my report was fairly accurate in terms of the existing showing a 4 vehicle queue, and that's what we saw. The queue length goes up, it's a mathematical calculation, goes up 41 feet, which is about 1.5 cars. So it even matches up based on that. So based on actual field observations and the analysis in here, there's certainly plenty of room in that jug handle to handle that morning peak hour traffic without backing it up out on Route 10. And I think that was, as far as I understand, that was the outstanding
Well, I do want to be
issues.
clear about something. We're characterizing the shopping center as an underperforming shopping center. But the shopping center is 100% occupied right now, isn't that true?
I think there's one vacant there's one vacant space.
There's one
that I
unit
saw.
vacant.
Yeah.
1 unit? And one of the users of the space is a gym that's pretty well
Planet
traveled,
Fitness.
right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of traffic there for the gym in the morning?
That's
Oh, by
That's probably what's generating mostly all of the traffic in the morning is the gym space. Now, what you should keep in mind is when we did our report, we took our traffic counts at the adjacent intersections and we just added on this 180 units traffic. I didn't remove any traffic associated with the existing shopping center, whether via ITE or counts. We looked at a worst case scenario where we just said 180 units is coming to vacant land. So we're really looking at a worst case scenario, but now if you take a look at the realistic numbers, it's going to be about a wash in traffic generation, and again, that jug handle, which would probably be the most impacted intersection, can handle the additional volume.
Thank you. I have no further questions for this witness.
Any questions over here?
I just, for clarification, the 180 units, I forget there's 120 are, I know you're not the unit guy, but your testimony is there'll be 61 vehicles leaving this site in the morning for 1 hour or per hour?
In the morning, in 1 hour, in the busiest hour.
The rush hours you define as from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m.?
7 to 9, and we're looking at the busiest hour within that 2 hour window.
What was the PM projection? I didn't get that.
Around 100.
The
80s?
PM for the shopping center?
No, for the apartments. Is that 80-ish?
100 minus 21.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
80, isn't it?
Yeah, 80.
Call it 80.
Okay.
You testified it was
No, we had
21
78
less.
that we counted, and the trip generation of, no, I'm sorry, 78 trips for the apartments. Sorry
PM.
about that, yes. And we counted 100 for the
So
shopping
it's
center.
22 less?
22 less.
Is anyone- The last time Joe Steiger was talking, they decided to take the bridge, tunnel, whatever you wanna call it, out of the circulation system, I guess that day. And we were kinda scrambling around that night on how that affected traffic on the site. Have you had a chance to look at that?
I've seen a concept plan without the tunnel. I don't think it has a tremendous impact. These are residential spaces. It's not like somebody's gonna be driving, it's not like the shopping center is today. Somebody's coming to the restaurant for the first time. These are people who live there and know it, and it seems to work out, but obviously we'll have
And
to
it's
show you that
two
plan.
less parking spots.
Yes, we lose 2 parking spaces. We're still well over.
I mean, obviously, I think there needs to be some signage there for anybody who's gonna come visit.
Yes.
And I come down to the end of this thing and I go, okay, I gotta turn right or turn left. They have to know at least the apartment 1 through 100 is over on this side. Are they gonna be driving around back there and trying to figure out how to get,
Right, when you come down into the middle, yeah, that makes sense. Some sort of guidance of which units are on which
and
side.
the other part of it, you've done the emergency vehicle template through this whole thing?
Yes, and we'll rerun that in the non-bridge scenario as well to confirm that it works.
Did we ever see that? Without the tunnel?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe we should, right?
We can do that.
Yeah, I just.
We'll do that.
And
I don't think that the tunnel.
some idea or just a note, directory sign or traffic or something.
We'll come up with a proposal for some traffic,
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
traffic control sign.
Yeah, I think
Signage also.
What we'll do
Yeah,
is
I
we'll
mean,
prepare a
when they took
concept.
the tunnel out, now you can't go from
Yeah.
one
that
side
will
to
be-
the other, you gotta go all the way back.
I'm not sure the testimony was emergency vehicles were going through the tunnel, but we'll prepare something to show the.
Thought he had a height on it, that,
I don't know.
okay.
We'll prepare a.
It's gone anyway, so it
Yeah,
doesn't make any
we'll
difference.
prepare a template to show what the current pattern would be. And I do not believe that the board saw the prior template. So we'll take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more important that you run it by the, the fire guy, but you should have it part of your.
We will reach out.
The traffic report without the tunnel is unchanged.
No, we
There's
looked
nothing
at
to do
the
with it.
driveway access points and how it impacts Route 10, so that's just an internal site circulation change.
Any other questions of this witness? Any members of the public have any questions of this witness? I hear none and see none. Do you have another witness?
I have Mr. McDonough.
3 for 3.
Mr. McDonough, you ran a full house tonight. Congratulations.
I think he's got a shingle hanging outside.
Mr. McDonough, if you could please stand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. For the
Okay.
record, John McDonough?
Mr. McDonough, you've had an opportunity to examine the local ordinances and master plan.
Yes.
You're familiar with the application that's before the board and all the testimony prior?
Yes, I am.
Wonder if you can give us your findings of the comparison of those documents to this application, along with some of the facts that need to be filled in here about some of the changes that we did, confirm some of the things I said.
Okay, so we put together a planning report that gives a little roadmap of where I'm going to be going with my testimony. It was dated August 9th, 2019. We included some pictures in there, general description of existing conditions, proposed conditions, and the relief that the applicant is seeking. We're really here for a bifurcated use variance application. This is a site that's in the OT Office Transitional District, which is exactly what the name says, a transition from business-oriented uses on Route 10 down to the residential uses on the lower side of the hill, again, as a transitional type of use. The relief is to allow for a residential multifamily development, which is not allowed in the OT district, so we're going to walk the board through the elements of proof that would be associated with a use variance. Before I do that, we'll hand out the usual batch of exhibits just to paint a picture of the site characteristic that lends itself well for this use in the surrounding land use context.
Figure out where we're at.
What was the last exhibit?
I think we are up to, just asked that it be marked as A5.
So A5 is going to be a 9-page exhibit. And there'll be a series of maps and photographs.
Got it? Good, man. Sorry.
Oh, great. Those guys
Okay, so as A5 has been handed around, the first page is a simple tax parcel map. It shows the subject property outlined in yellow. It's a single tax lot, Block 18, Lot 8. It is developed as a retail shopping center, and as you've heard, it's got some continued vacancies out there. However, it has substantial amount of occupancy as well, and the reason why is because the applicant has actually been sustaining lower rents here, well below market rate, to sustain those tenancies that are there. So it is a, I'll say, a struggling center the way it is in its current format, which is reflective of the condition of this particular segment of Route 10. We put it in the report, but there's real estate reports out there that are indicative of this particular section of Route 10 being weak from a retail submarket standpoint. And for reference, we put in the report the Goldstein Group Real Estate Report, which is a credible reference that planners use in looking at submarkets within New Jersey. And since 2008, 2009, we're looking at experiencing an eroding tenant base in the area. This particular stretch of Route 10 between Morris Plains and Ledgewood, according to the Goldstein Group, is among the weakest submarkets in the state, with retail vacancies that are approaching 9.5%. That's extremely high from a retail standpoint. And for reference, that refers to the Goldstein Group Real Estate Vacancy Report from 2018, which is a survey of over 4,250 properties on 22 retail corridors here in New Jersey. So retail is weak at this particular location. Contrary to that, we actually put it in the report, you see a plethora of residential uses have manifested here. I refer to this particular segment of Route 10 as the hill. This is where we're starting to climb up from the Route 53 area, and this is the portion of town in the Route 10 corridor where we do see a lot of residential uses. On the very last page, it's blurry, it's pulled out from the report, but we actually show all the residential developments in the area, including Powder Mill Estates, which is behind the subject development. We've got Mill Run, which is immediately opposite the subject site, and it's going to be a very similar format than what we saw over at Mill Run. Multi-story, multifamily development. That was approved by use variance. There are some other use variances that were approved in this area as well. We've got Powder Mill Village, we've got Mountain Way, the Mountain Club, Cedar Brook Apartments, the Atrium, all multifamily residential developments or single-family developments in this particular segment of Route 10. So on the one side, we have a weak retail market. On the other side, we have a strong residential market along this particular segment of Route 10. Second page shows the physical characteristic of the site, and you can see that it's developed with this L-shaped building, shopping center. And I think we all know the property tends to step down or starts to tear down from Route 10, reflective of the landform. The applicant is going to mimic that as part of the development. And you can see I put on the board the architect's plan, which has been submitted as part of the application. But the L is going to wrap around from a floor plan standpoint and take the form of a U. So there would be an additional wing, if you will, on the east portion of the property that's not presently there now. But from a spatial standpoint, the development is mimicking what we see now with a building at the back of the property, holding that rear limited disturbance as you presently see, which is a service court right now. That would go away, all the service uses that are associated with a non-residential use right adjacent to residential properties on Granada Drive, and keeping the same form of development with the parking in the front and the building wrapping around it, or acting actually as a buffer from that active use on the adjacent residential properties. Third page shows the surrounding land use characteristic, and red is non-residential. This is an area where there is a patch of non-residential uses, but as we saw, there's a much greater mass of residential uses in the area. And importantly, this is a site that does back up to residential, as you can see in the gold color on Granada Drive. We do see a green separation in between. That is going to be preserved and untouched as part of the development plans that are before you now. So that buffer system that's in place, which is fully mature, it's 80 to 100 feet tall, much taller than what the applicant's building is being proposed here, will remain intact and provide a separation from that adjacent residential use. What's,
Just a question.
yes, sir.
So we have the picture of the current shopping center.
Yes.
The position of the proposed building. Okay, you're saying that green area is gonna stay the same.
Yes, if I.
We don't have an overview picture of the proposed structure to overlay on this.
I see where you're going, a photo simulation to show. I don't know, if you could picture an additional story being put on the building, that's, we're basically looking at a building that would be one story above what is allowed, but it's not a photo simulation. There's not a before and after, at least that I've
The
been
footprint will
provided.
be somewhere, there'll still be that drive behind it, and that green space will be maintained.
That is correct. And I tried to give you on pages 5 and 6, both the summer view and I'll say the winter view. I just took those winter views about a week ago, so I'm not trying to be misleading. It's very dense foliage in the summer when the leaves come down. There's still nice separation, there's nice obscuring of this development. And again, bearing in mind, it's a service court now. You can see the dumpsters back there. I'm sure there's
Partially
loading
answer
and
my question.
unloading.
So the new structure will be occupying some of this driveway in the back or not?
The new structure, as I understand it, is going to be moved no closer than this particular building is right now. It's going to follow the line of the
drive
building.
back there will stay, and all the greenery will stay, right?
That is
Because
correct.
between the current wall and the residential property, there's about an 80 or 100-foot buffer, I believe.
That is correct. And those trees will remain untouched as part of the, oh, and look at what Mr. O'Neill has put up. Has that been marked, Joe?
I don't see a mark on it, so let's just call it A6 as a photo.
We don't have that.
Photo rendering of the rear of the building with existing tree line.
So that wall, Mr. O'Neill, is just about exactly where the back of the current buildings are?
That was the representation made by Mr. McClellan during the last hearing, that the building position is pretty much the same. The parking exists. You'll remember that there is a detention structure under that rear parking lot in accordance with a wall that's in the back there. I don't think a fence is shown. We're proposing a board-on-board fence to prevent the car headlights from shining back to the neighborhood. I can't see that far if that's on that photo simulation.
Those are gonna be parking places for the apartment units back.
That's still parking places, yes.
I turned away for a moment. Did you mark that, Mr. McDonough, when I wasn't
marked it in
looking?
the back. I didn't, it's glossy, so I couldn't write it up.
Okay, but it's marked on.
A6.
Do we have an exhibit showing the layout here tonight?
The floor plan,
Yeah, no, not the floor plan, the
site plan,
site plan, concept plan.
might be over.
No, I don't think it is.
It's not it.
Let me check.
Could you be tax plans?
The only reason I want to put down the distance from the rear property line to where the building would be.
Yeah, we had a lot of testimony on that, no, we don't.
I was looking at my notes, I didn't write it down, I can't believe it. Yeah, I can.
Testimony now is the same as it would be.
The testimony is without the exact dimension. Basically what you see in the photo on page number 5 of my packet is what you'll get in terms of the tree mass, and the building line is going to follow the existing building line, except for the fact that the wall is going to be a lot less bland than it presently is.
I think Mr. O'Neill has found one. Joe, just the date and what that dimension is.
This is a progress print of what we received this afternoon. I mentioned that there was a change in the plan removing a tunnel in the parking lot. So this hasn't been marked, but this does show that there was a 65-foot wide buffer, which is still existing, and the distance from the building to the property line, this is the property line, is 116 feet, 9.9 feet, so 117 feet.
And there wasn't parking proposed behind, is there parking
There was parking
Yeah.
proposed
Yes, there
behind
is.
it. There is parking. There is blacktop there now. It's being utilized as deliveries for all the restaurants and the other uses that are there on site.
So that's gonna be all removed for the detention basin and then just replaced?
The detention basin exists, so the existing blacktop is gonna be striped. There's not gonna be a disturbance to that wall.
Okay.
It's all gonna be utilized.
For right now, it's showing us 48 feet back from the wall, the building. They have a 30-foot drive aisle and 18-foot parking space deck.
Is it 116 feet total from the
Yes.
back property line to the back?
Yes, 116.9.
Okay.
Mr. McDonough, you were talking about the foliage there. On page 3, you've got the green, undeveloped land marked, but it doesn't extend all the way to the end of the building. Is that just a printing thing, or are there trees there? Do those trees extend all the way to the end?
The answer is it is green space. It's a printing. It's a graphical
Okay.
misrepresentation. So,
Well, Mr. McDowell, with all due respect, the tree, the one picture, Dave, shows it very clearly. It's very thick in the part. But down near that end where you see it go away, it's not very thick at all down there.
it's green space, but it's
Yeah.
not wooded, and that
Right.
could be why it's broken.
That was your question.
Can we put trees there? And I understand that it's, they live with a restaurant back there, and this is less obtrusive as townhomes, or apartments, but can we green that so it's consistent and not just a sudden drop off for those homes over there?
I think we need to look at the slope to make sure we can get into the woods. So that might be a question we have to come back with Mr. McClellan, because the slope changes there quite a bit. The wall height is dramatically changing in the back. And I'm not sure, unless you know, Mr. McDonough.
Well, all I
which
can
way it
say
goes.
is, I think that probably hasn't been fully thought out because we're not at the
That's
site
for
plan.
sure.
We're just looking at use right now. But I think to the extent that that green space is there, if it can be planted, it's certainly planted.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay? And bear in mind, I'm just going to take you back to photo number 5 again. There was a lot of talk, I remember last time, about this wall along the edge of the property. It sort of acts as a parapet now, or a Jersey barrier, if you will, from the pavement. We're standing on the pavement in the back. The wall rises up. There's a fence on top of that, which is a chain link fence with slats. The applicant has said it's going to make it a solid fence as part of site plan. I don't know what kind of fence it was.
Board on board.
Board on board, okay. And if you were to climb that fence and jump down, you would not actually land at the same elevation as the pavement, but it's even further sunk down. So this property is elevated with respect to the neighbors. So there's actually another barrier, I'll say, further downhill of the property before we reach the grade of the woodland behind it.
Yeah.
So,
That's what
as
we
I
need to
said,
look at.
these are mature trees which are at the 80 to 100 foot range. They're not being taken down. The actual height of the building at its highest point is going to rise up to 47.17 feet. So the massing will obscure, if not completely conceal, the building at this particular location.
So new building in the same footprint with the additional
With the additional height.
height or whatever.
With one change, and maybe you can
And
go
the
to
wing wrapping around.
it's open in the middle, right? With
Yes,
green
and I
space.
think if you go back to A6, it starts to show up, and it'll show up in the floor plan as well, but there is a break. There's a podium level that is U-shaped. That's where the parking is going to be, and then resting on top of the podium are are really two different, I'll say, tower elements. There's a three-story that's going to wrap around on the east side, and a three-story that's going to wrap around on the west side, with a break in between. So it's not one solid mass all the way around. And that will become a patio space. They're very popular now with multi-families to get out in the open air. And that comes out in the architecturals, which I haven't marked those because they're part of your packet, but I can if you want.
Let's do that, A7,
You want to mark the architectural plan?
please. Do you object, or?
No.
You're looking at me like,
I just wanted to be clear.
yes, if we could, please.
So just for orientation, the only thing I'll say with respect to A7, this is going to be P3 as part of the architectural plans that have been submitted. They are dated 8/2/2019. And just to give you the basic components of the plan, in the top portion, you see the U-shaped structure that's looking down on the floor plan. West would be to the left, east would be to the right. Again, the building is going to follow the basic pattern of what's there now, but for the fact that this wing on the east side is not presently there. It's going to be a podium level all the way around, which is where your parking is going to be. Parking is going to come in from the two sides, and then sitting atop that podium level is when these three stories rise up in two pieces, a portion to the east and a portion to the west. There's going to be a total of 60 units per floor.
Mr. McDonough, could you take the microphone with you, please?
Sure. Not picking me up?
No.
Some.
Okay.
Be better.
So, two wings, the east and the west, 60 units per floor, a total of 180. The wings are center loaded with units on either side. And I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but there are co-units that are going to be interspersed within the development. They're not set off by themselves. And on the planning end and the affordable housing regulations all encourage that there's this commingling, that the co-units have the same access to amenity space and are again positioned throughout the development, not located or clustered in a corner.
Now, the rendering for this is A3, which I just put behind you there. The other behind you.
This
Right,
one.
yeah.
So again, reminding the board, A3 gives you a sense of that breakup of the building in the middle and the open space, the three stories. There are some balcony elements which are actually recessed. They're not going to stick out, so they're internal to the facade of the building. And from this particular vantage point, I'm standing over at the eastern portion of the site, looking back across. You get a sense of the tree massing along the back and how the heights of the building relate to the tree masses. These are not going to be flat roof structures, but they will actually have pitch, so they will maintain that residential scale. And similar to what you see now when you go on the site, you're going to have these segmented parking areas that will work their way up the hill to Route 10. Presently, to get on the site, there's a driveway on the eastern portion of the site that's going away, as Mr. McClellan said. So there'll be one less, I'll say, conflict point along the highway. It's going to maintain the center driveway. That'll be the way in and the way out. And again, one less conflict point on Route 10. And that'll take you through the development and around the back of the development. And it's been tested with all the turning templates to have safe navigation through the site. You've heard a lot of testimony about that. But this gives a sense of the color scheme, the material scheme, the overall look of the building, nice glazing, nice breakup of the massing, and again, structures that are going to be a lot more attractive, I think, in the public eye than that which is presently there right now, particularly on the residential side. And the other appeal, of course, is that this is moving from non-residential against residential to residential against residential, which has better harmony from a planning standpoint. Along with the floor plan, the other graphics that you see on this plan, the two elevations show the east and the west elevation in the middle of the page. There's sort of in between that U that wraps around. These are the side views, and they're just simply showing how the parking garages on the west side and on the east side are accessed from the lower levels. And then finally, the two graphics that you see at the base are the facade elevations looking from the north and from the south, with the breakup of the massing in the middle, which is where that open space would be. Finally, the tables just show the breakdown of the unit counts. We're looking at a total of 180. I have better percentages here in terms of the numbers. There's 144 one-bedrooms, that's 80% of the development. 30 two-bedroom units, which is 17% of the unit count. 6 three-bedroom units, that's 3%. I think that's a factor of the affordable units, and that's part of the affordable requirement. And then importantly, this will go towards the positive aspect of the application, is that there is an inclusionary component, that there will be affordable housing provided here, which is inherently beneficial, at least that component, even if the municipality has met its obligation. We know we go through cycles here. We're in round 3 now. Round 4 is coming up in 2025, so there'll be a whole nother cycle again. And the courts, as I understand the law, is pretty clear that affordable housing is inherently beneficial whether an obligation has been met or not. I think we've used the word that Parsippany does have a plan in place, which is, we'll say, aspirational in nature. Not all of the sites may actually manifest, so this provides, I'll say, a relief valve or additional units that could meet that demand if it doesn't manifest somewhere else. So the fact that this is an inclusionary development, that this is going to provide affordable units, I think adds value to the positive criteria, or weight to the positive criteria as part of the application. In terms of the relief, we don't have a long list here because we're only doing a bifurcated use variance application. So it's a D1 use variance to allow a multifamily residential development in what is a office, essentially an office zone. It would allow for self-storage here as well. The current use, interestingly, retail, is not permitted. So we're moving from one non-conforming use to another. I would offer, again, that residential is better adjacent to residential. There is interrelated height relief that the applicant is seeking as well. The zone allows a maximum of 35 feet. This is going to be more than 10% above, so that's a D6 variance. 47.17 feet is what the applicant is seeking for that. Was really an additional story. The zone allows for 2.5. The applicant is seeking what would effectively be 4 stories, 3 living levels, and then the 1 parking level, which is really submerged from this particular view, but open up in the back. And then finally, coverage and building coverage and lot coverage relief, which is an improvement over the existing condition. The building coverage is 18.6%, 15% is allowed, and the lot coverage is going to be 64.1%, whereas 60% is the maximum allowed. Again, that's an improvement over that which presently exists now. So the proposal is going to give the site a nice fresh look. It's going to add in a lot more plantings, a lot fresher look on the facade of the building. And while it does increase the overall massing, we think the architectural elements and features here do a nice job of breaking up that overall massing. With respect to the relief before the board, on the positive side, the site is particularly suited because this is a predominantly residential area. And again, backing up to a residential use. It promotes the public good with affordable housing, which adds weight to the positive criteria. And affordable by itself would be inherently beneficial. I'm not necessarily saying the whole project is, but I am saying that that one component does add weight to the positive criteria. It's also going towards the planning goal for efficient use of land. This is essentially a reconstruction and I'll say a replication of what's there now from an overall format standpoint in terms of the overall form of the development. And then, of course, the promotion of a desirable visual environment to improve the overall aesthetic of the site. On the negative side, no substantial detriment in terms of the overall operation of the site. Functionally, it'll operate safely and efficiently, and we think it's been well designed to accommodate the vehicles that'll come on the site. Better compatibility of land use, and then the height being mitigated by the fact that we do have this built-in mitigation system at the back of the property with that buffering that's there and that will remain intact. All said, we think the statutory burden is met here with, again, essentially something that physically will look and feel like that which is there, just a better use of the land. And with that, I think I've hit my proofs on direct, Joe, unless you need more.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Any questions over here on the right? Do you have any idea of the height of the current structures?
I
So
don't.
how much-
We can get
thi-
you that.
This is gonna be 48 feet, the current structures are 30 feet?
It's a good question, and I'm going to just check Pat's plans right here to see if
It doesn't happen.
I remember asking that along the way, so I want to see if we, note number 7 may have our answer.
That's a progress.
I am not seeing it on the plans here.
We'll have to come back with that, Mr. Willis.
So you submitted a photo of Mill Run, page 7.
Yes.
Is that approximately, do you know, is it approximately the same height as the proposed building here?
It is a similar format. Bear in mind, over at Mill Run, there's no parking under the building. This is going to have a parking level that's under the building. So from the vantage point that you see in A3, I think this was?
A3, that is.
A3, yes, the answer is yes. It's going to be similar to Mill Run. On the downhill side, there'll be that exposed base.
Okay, and Mountain Club, Powder Mill Village, Cedar Brook, Mountain, I don't know if that's maybe the atrium, are those also 3 stories high?
They're variable. The atrium is older. I think the atrium actually has octagonal shaped buildings. It's an old, I'll say a 1980s style development.
82.
What is it?
82.
82.
Because
Okay.
I heard it on a Board of Adjustment matter.
Okay. And then, of course, some of these are older apartments, garden-style apartments, and they may be 2 stories or 3 stories. Mountain Club steps up the hill. I think there may be some 2 stories and some higher as we work our way up the slope. Mountain Club was actually a use variance. I remember that was zoned retail as well, and that was approved for residential.
Most of those those sites in there are use variances,
I believe so.
other than
Yeah.
the Powder Mill stuff.
You remember the Mountain?
I did Mountain Club. I did the front of Mountain Club, which
Oh, right,
that was
right.
the portion that was zoned retail.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be built on or something, that's, but then
It
nobody
was
could find
unusual.
the
I remember it was
Nobody could
unusual.
find the paperwork on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mill Run, of course, I don't remember what it was zoned for, but it may have been the same OT zone. I can't remember.
It's
But
the
I,
old- The old
my night for
Mountain
not
Club was the
remembering.
old,
Apartments.
yeah, what was it called? Something Village, something,
You get the builders too. They
it was originally apartments. That was built in the early 60s, wasn't it?
I don't know. It's been there forever. Steeper hell through there.
180 total units?
180, and there's a 15% set aside here, which equates to 29 units. I should have it in here somewhere.
That's 180 total.
Yes.
And to get to, I'm sorry, to get to that underground parking,
Yes.
can you just illustrate that?
Yep, and I know I went through that kind of fast, but if you're looking at A3, you would approach from the right, or you would approach from the left, and there is an opening in the base level that would take you through.
Architecturals, John?
I will.
underneath?
And Craig, that hasn't gone away as part of this tunnel that we're, okay. So the point is,
Yeah,
I think this
Right
will
there.
show it best.
It's right there.
So if I'm coming in from the right of A7, the entrance would be to the right or to the left, and you could see the garage openings in the west elevation and the east elevation. So they're at the back of the building. Not along the back of the building, but towards the back of the building. And that, much like the floor plan, the parking is stacked with an aisle in the middle and parking on either side.
And does that need to accommodate fire trucks at all?
No.
Does not?
I don't believe it does.
There's 2 designs on those decks or parking lots. Either they're going to have it open, but it looks like this one's going to be all vented. Meaning they have to have fans, all kinds of stuff in there.
And
Most
just for the numbers, there's 413 parking spaces, 89 are going to actually be in, I'll say, the enclosed or covered parking
I
area.
just wonder if there's a car fire underneath the building.
I think it's sprinklered. I
Okay.
think I think it has
there's
to
all
be.
kinds of- they have to have water in there. Why they'd have water for a car fire, I don't know, but they have to have water and all the chemicals.
Thank you.
I've just gone through a whole bunch of garages recently, so I have a big garage. I'm an expert in garages.
I guess the question I have is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
the only question I have is, the increased height, what effect that's gonna have on the residential properties in the fall and winter?
Well, I think it is softened. Not going to say it's going to be 100% concealed, but it is going to be softened by the mass and obscured by the mass of what's in between it, both horizontally and vertically. Even when that foliage drops, I think you can see there's a
no
lot of.
residential vertically, Mr. Kent.
I'm sorry?
There's no residential impact vertically.
No residential impact vertically in terms of.
To this side, that's a storage unit.
Yes.
Yeah, and then.
Oh, you're talking about to the sides.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about, I'm talking to the houses behind it.
Yeah.
On, Granada
I don't see
Drive.
the additional story, again, from going to a residential use as opposed to a non-residential use. I don't see that as having a substantial impact, given what's in between.
Other than maybe that left side where there's minimal trees, and now you've got people kind of looking down into a property?
Yes, and bear in mind, that's the portion of the site where we do actually have a pullback. It's not a completely L-shaped building, but it does have a little notch in there, so the building does pull away from that particular corner.
We'll have some more info.
Yeah, going over that, I think would be helpful, Mr. O'Neill, too, in the future. The drop-off from the back of the property to the residential houses is pretty significant, okay?
Yes.
So if you're in those houses, you're well below the current structures, okay?
Right.
But I think it'd be helpful to have that elevation picture here a bit, in the future. How
A
much that
picture of the
drops down.
elevation from the
Yeah,
rear.
the elevation change, because it's significant.
All right.
Are those residents' backyards a wall at the end of their property?
No,
Yeah.
the walls,
The wall's petered out by there.
yeah. The wall's 65 feet from the property line.
If you look at that page, Dave, you were looking at before with the A3, where they showed the property line with that green part, that goes into part of the residential properties, as you see.
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And that wall at this end, on the far right, is about 7 or 8 feet high to go in the wood area. As you get down to the far left, it's almost level, it's 1 or 2 feet.
So the wall's in the woods, there's still a bunch of woods left
Yeah,
after the
yeah,
wall?
yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Actually, the woods are all after the wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to comment a couple things on the affordable housing units. The township has reached its certification stage and been signed off by Fair Share Housing. Its housing plan, there is a fair share number that was agreed to. The plan for the township does not meet that number. It meets a different number, which is calculated based on the amount of vacant land that's developable in the township. The gap between what the formula says, the affordable housing units, and the township certified plan is fairly significant. It's about 400 units. But the court has said, you've only got so much developable land, you shouldn't have any more obligation than X. However, that leaves open any redo projects which you've just heard. So it is not, it's not contemplated in the approved plan because nobody knew of the project at that time or didn't put it in. On the other hand, it goes to implement what the settlement says. The other aspect is that the township has adopted an ordinance that says you're supposed to have a 20% set aside on any project of 5 or more units. That ordinance was adopted after this application was filed, and a discussion during the break with Mr. O'Neill, he states that he believes he was deemed complete prior to the adoption of that ordinance.
I will address that timeline very specifically in my summation next time.
Have I said something that's wrong?
No, you're exactly right, and I was able to determine that the unmet need section of the plan is 303 units.
Is that the missing?
303 units.
That's the gap? That's the gap. One other aspect, the term completeness is also important, because the Supreme Court has said that when you file an application and you deem complete, you lock zoning. Town can't go and change the zoning out from under you. But you have to be complete. And there was a Supreme Court case on what complete is.
Or isn't in that
Yeah,
case.
or is it?
Or is it? The long and the short of it is, they've been deemed complete by the board, and we've proceeded with hearings, and that's done.
So the ordinance does not apply.
The ordinance
Long
doesn't,
story short.
the ordinance doesn't apply because of what the Supreme Court has said.
And the timing of this application as relates to the ordinance.
That's right.
But it does, the 15% set aside is the standard that the courts have basically used as measuring these projects as they certify them. Have towns gotten higher percentages? Absolutely. Probably almost all of them got higher percentages than the 15%. Well, I'm not gonna say all of them. There was, a number of municipalities did negotiate higher percentages. But they did that in context with higher densities as well. So it was a give a little, take a little. I just want to kind of give you some background on what this affordable part of this plan is all about.
What's the number we're required to do right now? What's the number that, this first phase, how many units are we supposed to build of affordable? Does anybody know that number?
Yeah. Let me have a moment.
9 something?
I thought it was around 8. That's about right.
You're right.
To build in addition to what was already been designated?
No, to meet the requirement, we need 800.
Because there are existing units that have been designated already.
No, the town got credit for things it's done in the past,
Yeah.
which is fairly limited, but they've done some stuff. That built up to, against the number of units, which is called this realistic development potential. And that's that RDP you hear about. And that's where they calculated, Joe, did you get it?
Yeah, it's, hold on a second.
The total number is something around 1,400, isn't it?
No, that reduced to
Yeah.
800 or something.
You're actually taking away the credits and the way we did the math. The plan itself builds 580 physical units,
Affordables.
affordable
Right now.
units, affordable units.
And how many of those 580 are already committed to be built? on the-
That's the number that's committed to be built, 580.
None. You haven't started.
I understand that, but there was
That's-
council
there's-
approval to do certain things.
All the inclusionary zoning is in place for the 580 units.
And that's what we have to build today. Or we have to.
What, and then there's the 303 that need to be built. So all totaled, the whole plan works out to about 880 units.
But do we have to build 800 in 2020? Or do we have to build 800?
It's over about 7 years now.
Well, no, your cutoff date, you're supposed to have achieved the 500 and whatever number it was by 2025.
Yeah.
However, the way it is, All the town has to do is zone for it.
Well,
Doesn't have to be built.
And the court has had a master review the town's selection of sites and says they are approvable and developable.
There
So
are.
there's no shams going on. They're not zoning the middle of the swamp is affordable housing. They're not gonna get away with that.
they do
Put it on the
have
filings?
percentages that they do have to meet to build
Yep.
as part of the agreement. So not the whole total.
2025.
You're out of
Yeah,
here, man.
there's a,
You're out of here, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be 78 years old, Jesus.
by next summer, the
You're lucky
town,
if I'm not drooling all over myself.
by June of next summer, they have to file a report on how much progress they've made. And if the progress is not really good, they're gonna go back again.
Yeah.
What?
You'll definitely be
He said it'd be drooling.
You'll definitely be in
You know how
diapers.
old I am? Okay.
Progress means it is approval process or the building process? Complete.
They have to show that there is some progress to achieve their obligation. If there is no progress, I'm sure the courts will then say, they'll threaten them. They'll say, we'll take your immunity away. That means it opens the doors to anybody coming in and putting up whatever they want. And you don't want to be in that situation.
For another day.
Not good for the town.
Realistically, there isn't a whole lot of room to build anything.
Nora, when can we carry this case to?
After Route 10, you rip it down.
Joe,
Route 10 to 46
handling Liquid Church,
Mid-rise,
Yeah.
and they're all over.
what do you think going on the
Liquid
same night?
Church is gonna be pretty short.
Okay, February 5th.
February 5th?
I won't be here.
I won't be here.
How do
Just a
you
couple
know
of
that?
snowbirds.
Well, I know that.
I'm trying to plan ahead for tomorrow. I'm not doing well.
But you'll have other people. I might. It's my
So
wife's.
we'll ask that the matter be carried without further notice. Mr. Chairman will grant all necessary extensions through the end of February.
So we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we are talking about Wednesday, February 4th.
So I'll be here though.
Fourth or
Fifth.
fifth?
4th or 5th?
Fourth or fifth?
Fifth.
I can't see this for some reason.
Again?
5th.
Whose birthday?
I have nothing planned.
Now you do.
I didn't even put the,
My wife too.
I didn't even put the schedule on my calendar because I was waiting until after the election. Depending on how the election came out. I might have bailed, man. I might have bailed.
Determines whether you put the schedule in or not.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there anything else we need to do, Nora?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
Is
All in
Mr.
favor?
McDonough done?
Yes.
Is there any questions for him? You wanna just get that out of the way?
Thank you, just in case.
Yeah. I would hate to have somebody say that they had a question for him.
Oh, good point.
Any member of the public have any questions of Mr. McDonough? I hear none and see none. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
2918.
It's so easy to forget that part.
I have no clue.
Well, there's no
Try to hustle all the
Scott,
questions.
Yeah, you can hold this.
Yep.
There you go, John.
Thanks for putting it on your screen.
No, really, you do. Here, I guess.
Yeah, we got a big one tomorrow night.
What do you got?
Michigan State.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, tomorrow's a big one.
Pat-
They're gonna have more people there than I think they've had.
How many people can sit there?
Have a good night.
They never opened the upstairs, only opened downstairs.
They always have those
Very
dark curtains on the